Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We intend to start recording right away.
I can turn that off for now if you like. It's just automatic. It automatically comes on.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to wait just a few more seconds to see if anyone else joins our presentation this afternoon. So we'll wait just a few more seconds before I get started. Okay, just for time's sake, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Before I get started, though, I want to thank everybody for being here with me today and for sharing space with me on learning more about how to best support survivors. It's not an easy job, so I want to say thank you to everybody for being here and for being able to do this hard work that we do. So my name is Lauren Lochotzki, and I'm the sexual assault advocate at New Directions. New Directions is the Rape Crisis Center domestic abuse shelter in Knox County, Ohio. We're located in Mount Vernon, Ohio. And I've been with New Directions since 2015. I primarily work with survivors of sexual violence, both in the community and on campuses. And I supervise a sexual violence advocate group on Kenyon campus, which is what I'm going to be discussing in this presentation today. I also work with domestic violence and intimate partner violence survivors, facilitate our local sexual assault response team, support groups, and then do some prevention work as well. Before I go on to the objectives, I just wanted to let you know that if you have any questions at any time, feel free to type those into the chat box. So we've got somebody watching that, and you can interrupt at any time. I'm perfectly fine with that. So our objectives today, we are going to increase participant knowledge to utilize existing campus resources to expand campus advocacy. We're going to increase participant belief in the benefits of collaboration with key stakeholders to support campus advocacy. And we're going to build participant skills to promote community collaboration and partnership with colleges and universities. So New Directions is dedicated to nourishing community relationships with local college campuses by holding space for conversations about accountability, justice, equity, and accessibility to better serve survivors. By uncovering common goals among the different groups involved and planting the seeds of positive partnership, New Directions has been able to focus this initiative to help campus advocacy bloom. Before I go on from the objectives, I'm just realizing that I delved right into this. Do we have to do any housekeeping issues, Kate, or is there any announcements? I'm so sorry.
No, you're okay. I was going to do an intro for you, but you did yours beautifully. You didn't even need me. So we are perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Well, we'll continue on then. I'm going to talk a little bit about within campus advocacy, experience working on campus advocacy initiatives, as well as the importance of campus advocacy. So I started working on Kenyon College's campus, which is a small rural liberal arts college located in Gambier, Ohio, in 2016, providing individual advocacy during Title IX investigations. Shortly after, I began to have more of a presence on campus by providing individual advocacy to students, faculty, and staff, as well as facilitating a sexual violence survivors group on campus. Prior to this involvement, I attended a few SMA, which stands for Sexual Misconduct Advisor, meetings as a guest. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the SMAs in just a few moments. Before we go any further, it's really important to acknowledge the importance of campus advocacy while doing this work. A lot of folks that we work with within the community and universities don't necessarily understand the importance of advocacy. It's not that they don't care about it, it's just a lack of understanding, I think. So being able to explain this importance and then having the tools and the statistics to back this up is really important. So as we know, sexual violence on campus is pervasive. More times than not, this violence goes underreported for a variety of reasons, such as fear of reprisal, not having faith in the judicial system or the Title IX office, believing it was not important enough to report, maybe not wanting the perpetrator to get into trouble, safety issues, and especially on small campuses like Kenyon, not being able to distance oneself from peer groups, from fraternities that they might be involved in, sports groups, friends, etc. So 13% of all students experience rape or sexual assault through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. And this is among all graduate and undergraduate students. Among graduate and professional students, 9.7% of females and 2.5% of males experience rape or sexual assault through the physical force, violence, or incapacitation. And then among undergraduate students, 26.4% of females and 6.8% of males experience rape or sexual assault through physical force, violence, or incapacitation. 5.8% of students have experienced stalking since entering college. And statistics also show that newer students, specifically freshmen, are much more vulnerable to sexual violence, especially within the first semester. So with this small amount of information on statistics of sexual violence on campuses, it's very clear to see why having advocates on campus is so imperative for survivors. Not only is it vital for them, but it's also vital for friends or peers of the survivor who've been negatively impacted by the assault or the violence as well. College-based advocates are crucial in helping survivors navigate through their healing journey. I find it beneficial to refer survivors to community-based rape crisis centers as well. And then bringing these two together is the most beneficial thing for a survivor. That way the survivor can have everything they need in the community aspect as well as within the university or the college. So advocates can provide support in a plethora of ways. Providing medical and legal advocacy are just a couple. Survivors are more likely to contact law enforcement to make a police report, go through a court case, and receive proper medical care and a sexual assault forensic exam if they have an advocate support. This is especially important for Kenyon College, as we have had some of our key stakeholders state that they're having a lot of trouble, a lot of issues getting survivors on campus to go ahead and file police reports or to go to the hospitals for a forensic exam. So about 1 in 5 college-aged female survivors received assistance from victim services agencies, and only 20% of these report to law enforcement. So with those statistics, you can again see how important it is to have an advocate present for survivors on campus. So I mentioned key stakeholders in the last slide. So the key stakeholders that we've been working with through this journey of bringing a community-based rape crisis center, collaborating with a student peer group on campus, has been the Kenyon Title IX office. And that's comprised of Sam Hughes, who's the Title IX coordinator, and then Kevin Peterson, who's the deputy Title IX coordinator. And you're going to hear from Kevin in just a little bit. The Cox Health and Counseling Center, who is comprised of Chris Smith as the director. And then you're going to hear from him as well. And then you'll also hear from the student peer advocates, the president, her name is Emma. But with the student peer advocates, we have the SMAs, which I said earlier were the sexual misconduct advisors, who evolved to be the SERPAs, and that's what we are now, the Sexual Respect Peer Alliance members. And then, of course, you have New Directions, which is our agency. So it's important to share the history of our partnership. Before I begin the history, due to our commitment to confidentiality, I'm going to be intentionally vague when explaining certain situations. So the SMAs, or Sexual Misconduct Advisors, have been a presence on Kenyon's campus for over 10 years. Originally, their student-led group was housed in the counseling center at Kenyon. Although they provided incredible advocacy and support to survivors on campus, there was a lack in protocols, and there was also a lack in reporting, which was problematic. They were not considered confidential to the college, meaning they were to report each sexual assault to the Title IX office, which acted as a barrier for survivors to want to receive support from them. Staff turnover also led to a lack of supervision for the sexual misconduct advisors. And then the counseling center had to make a difficult decision to remove the group from their department and to remove the group from campus. So the SMAs, being the group of passionate students that they are, did not want survivors on campus to not have that peer support. So they recognized how essential peer support is, and they formed an underground group, which they called the SERPAs, which is the Sexual Respect Peer Alliance, where they existed on campus, but they weren't an extension of the college. So they were able to be on campus, but they weren't able to have any presence on campus, if that makes sense. This is where the SERPAs, or as I said, Sexual Peer Alliance, began. So they did, though, lack proper training. They didn't have anyone to debrief with. They lacked supervision. And then, as I said, being an underground group, they weren't able to have that presence on campus. So a lot of survivors didn't even know that they were existing at this point in time. So initially, the SERPAs came to the Title IX office and the Health and Counseling office hoping to get that presence back. They questioned what it would look like to have more involvement with our agency. And we were already somewhat involved with them as well as the campus. So after many meetings with the two major components of the college, we left it in the hands of the SERPAs. And they decided that they did want to be an extension of our agency, so they'd have more of a campus affiliation as well as confidentiality. That was a huge piece. They wanted to have that confidentiality piece. So collaborating with them, we've been able to provide them with the necessary 40-hour advocate training, proper and confidential documentation, and now they have guidance and supervision. And we're really excited to see how this is going to continue. So this is a newer thing for our agency as well as for Kenyon College. And I'm going to go a little bit into the timeline of what that looks like. So in December 2019, like I said, although we've been working with the college previously, it wasn't until then that our agency officially began discussing the SERPAs having direct affiliation with our agency and with the Title IX office and Health and Counseling Center. That's when those conversations really began happening. So then through January 2020 through May 2020, lots and lots of emails were sent. The beginning stages were compiled of emails from our key stakeholders. Also, a lot of other members from the university, from the college, were involved. So it was a matter of deciding who needed to be at the table, whose voices needed to be heard, things of that nature, because we didn't want too many people involved that didn't necessarily need to be. These emails quickly transpired to meetings. We had, I believe, 1 or 2 in-person meetings, and then due to the pandemic, everything became virtual. We had to do everything over Zoom, which actually worked in our favor, I would say, because we were able to meet a lot easier than meeting everyone on campus, especially during like the break periods where everyone was all over the country, different countries even. And it was just a really, as you all know on this call, crazy, crazy time. We were all navigating through life in a way that we had never navigated through life before. So then September of 2020 through November of 2020, the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence offered us the Advocate Training Institute. So we had 20 hours that the SERPAs were able to do with their training through the Alliance. And then in January of 2020, we had our agency provide the remaining 20 hours of training needed. And it was nice because we were able to do specific Kenyon training, which is really important if you decide to establish a group such as the SERPAs in your area, because it's really important, especially if it's a peer-led group, to have the knowledge of the campus. Every campus, I think, has like specific things that are unique to them. And it's important to have a voice from the peers, from the students to become more familiarized with that, if that makes sense. So with our timeline, as you can see, it took a little under a year to have the SERPAs become a confidential extension of our agency, not an extension of the college as they were at first, and not an underground group either. Currently right now, how it is, so we are transitioning from students who have been a SERPA who are graduating to new members coming in. We are deciding right now when we want to do the training, the 40-hour training for the SERPA members. And then we have monthly meetings where we can meet over Zoom to just have that connection piece, touch base. And then the SERPAs are still taking calls. It's obviously slowed down quite a bit throughout the summer. But if they do take a call, they can debrief with me right away. And then they document everything and then send it right into us. So one of the most important tasks of all of the entities involved was to define common goals. And the number one goal that we were able to decide on right away without any issues was how do we best serve survivors on campus? We also wanted our goal to be how do we provide quality, confidential, 24/7 services to survivors? And then how do we establish a structure of supervision for peer advocates? Those were our definite common goals that was really easy actually with the major groups involved to come up with these. So I'm going to go into hearing a little bit from our partners, from our key stakeholders at this point in time. First, we're going to hear from Kevin Peterson, who I said was the Deputy Title IX Coordinator at Kenyon College.
I don't hear any volume, Lauren.
Okay, give me 1 second, I apologize. I thought I had that figured out before we got started, but. Okay, let's try this.
3 years.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Peterson, and I'm the Civil Rights Title IX Deputy Coordinator at Kenyon College. And I've been at Kenyon for the last 3 years. And when I arrived on campus 3 years ago, we already had a wonderful partnership with New Directions. We would refer faculty, staff, and students to New Directions if they reported to us an issue of sexual misconduct or harassment. We would talk about them in all our Title IX trainings we would do every year as a wonderful resource that's available to all members of our community for free, and that's off campus. And we would actually even go to New Directions and train all their advocates in our process. So if someone came to them to get support and they wanted to go through a process here, they'd be able to be knowledgeable and able to speak to the students about what to expect and how to advise them appropriately. On top of that, they would also be on campus to meet with students. They would table in our cafeteria, passing out information and resources to students on a regular basis. So they were visible on our campus on a regular basis, and we had a wonderful partnership. But just before I arrived on campus 3 years ago, there was another group on our campus called SMA, Sexual Misconduct Advisors. Now, they were a student group that had connections to some offices on campus, but also were pretty independent. And they were a peer-to-peer group that was there to be there for other students. They were students who were there for other students when someone experienced something like sexual assault. And they were a wonderful resource on campus. They had been on campus for almost 20 years by the time I arrived. Students, alumni, faculty, and staff all loved the SMAs on campus. But just before I arrived, there became some problems because we were trying to figure out how to best support the SMAs, how to best resource them, and how to best, in some ways, how to best fit legally, like with what they were doing as confidential resources, but still dealing with mandatory reporter laws and how we could handle that. So we were increasingly concerned before I arrived that we were, we might have been outside of some Ohio law, and trying to figure out how we could bring that in and be the most appropriate we could be in training them, making sure they had the best resources, because were they resourced enough? Could they get in over their heads, and where was the support that they needed? And it was a really tough time. We were trying to figure out, how does this best work out? How can we keep this resource that the campus community loves, but how can we do it in the best way possible? And there were a lot of hard discussions that the SMAs actually stopped. The organization disbanded for a while, but we still stayed in communication to figure out how can we do this the best way. And that's when we approached New Directions, and we said, is there any way you could help us out? Is there any way that these SMAs that changed their name at that time to SERPA, the Sexual Respect Peer Alliance, any way they could work with you? And New Directions said, yes, they would love to do that. And what happened was, so SERPA came under New Directions, so they were distinct. They were not officially associated with Kenyon any longer, and they were officially associated with New Directions. But all of them were students who lived on campus and went to school here, and they got advocacy training, the 4-hour, 40-hour training. They got supervision. They got resourced in a way that they've never had before. And they were able to start doing the work that they've done before on campus in a way we thought was so much more healthy and so much appropriate. And they got the resources they need, and they got the confidentiality they needed, and so many other things. And it helped us to give everything to Kenyon that we wanted to give to Kenyon, while filling in the laws that we felt we needed to follow. So that was one of the best things. I mean, we were so thankful for New Directions coming alongside of us and helping us in that way. And we think it was a win-win, because at the same time that, we got so much, but New Directions also got a lot of highly motivated students who are very eager to work in this field, to be volunteers for New Directions. So it became what was a good partnership, became even stronger. And we are so thankful for the way New Directions has stepped to the plate and really helped us out in a need that we really felt we had. Because sometimes people want to talk to someone who is off our campus. Something has happened and is deeply personal, is deeply very difficult situations, as we all would understand. And they sometimes want to talk to someone who is not here. And that's what New Directions provide. Whether it could be a student being a part of SERPA, or it could be someone who's a paid full-time staff over there as well. because we realize in our office, we are not advocates. That's not our role. And it's nice to know that we have advocates nearby who are ready and willing to help our students and or faculty and staff whenever they are needed. So thank you very much for listening. And again, thank you to New Directions for all the help they have given us.
So next we're going to hear from Chris Smith, who was another key stakeholder, and he's the Director of Health and Counseling Services at Kenyon. Unfortunately, he was not able to submit a video, so I'm going to go ahead and read what he submitted to us. So Chris says, when he began his service at Kenyon College, he approached New Directions to discuss how their partnership could expand and how they could touch points within our campus community for his professional staff, and then also for the SERPAs. As Kenyon College and New Directions engaged in continuing our collaboration, we were able to bring innovation, sex education, and consent-focused programming to the campus community. As the SERPA organization came into existence, Chris says that his colleagues and himself intentionally facilitated an intentional partnership between New Directions and SERPA. I asked him, what was your experience of the history with the SERPAs before collaborating with New Directions? And Chris stated that the Sexual Respect Peer Alliance morphed from the Sexual Misconduct Advisors, which had a long-standing history of peer support at Kenyon College. He says, when I began my role at Kenyon, the SMAs were organized within my department. I quickly discovered that these well-intentioned and passionate students were not properly trained for the role that they were serving on campus. I approached New Directions in 2017, and we started creatively thinking of how to facilitate a more formal partnership between my office and theirs, as well as with the SERPAs. That partnership came to fruition just prior to COVID-19 in February of 2020. Chris also states that New Directions is invaluable to Knox County, including the Kenyon campus community. And as we think forward, including the expansion of Kenyon's orientation of first-year students and overall student success, New Directions is a partner that we've always considered and will always be invited to the table. I asked what, in his opinion, are some key takeaways from this partnership that could be replicated on other campuses. And Chris states, effective partnerships take a lot of time and patience to develop. Kenyon College and New Directions have patiently and intentionally grown together. That growth is assuring a solid foundation for best practices and innovation to extend the mission of both organizations. And lastly, we are going to hear from Emma Spivak, who is the current SERPA president.
Hi, my name is Emma Spivak. I am a recent graduate of Kenyon College, where I was lucky enough to be president of the Sexual Respect Peer Alliance and work very closely with our partners and correspondents at New Directions. So in terms of my involvement with the New Directions partnership, I was very fortunate to be involved in the formation and the development of the partnership, kind of from square one. So I worked very closely with Lori and Lauren, who kind of served and continue to serve as our Kenyon correspondents for New Directions. So that entailed a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of logistics, and kind of figuring out together what that partnership would look like, and then also planning how New Directions would facilitate our training as SERPA supporters. So it was a very collaborative process and definitely required a lot of patience with us from New Directions. So I really appreciate that patience and that persistent involvement with us throughout the process of forming this partnership. So before SERPA partnered with New Directions, the group really functioned similarly, but was kind of lacking that support and guidance from an outside resource like New Direction. So we still talked to survivors one-on-one. We still did a lot of programming and event planning and stuff like that, but it definitely felt like we needed to legitimize ourselves via this partnership, and also just to have support and wisdom from people who are essentially experts in these topics. So I think that has been extremely beneficial throughout our partnership. And I think we definitely feel a little bit more stable as a group with guidance from New Directions. I think the ultimate goal of SERPA as an organization has really remained the same since we established ourselves as a group, in that we really just want to provide support for survivors that feels reliable and trustworthy and safe. I think everyone in the organization really recognizes the benefits of peer support, and that peers, especially college students, really understand each other on a different and unique level. So that has kind of been our mission from the very beginning, and New Directions has definitely helped us bring that dream to life. So we are very grateful. I think the partnership with New Directions has been valuable for countless reasons. One of them being that the partnership has helped us increase our visibility on campus as an organization. I think there was a little bit of a lack of trust between Kenyon's administration and our organization prior to this partnership. So by partnering with New Directions, we kind of established ourselves as this legitimate resource and something that was supported by New Directions, which is an even more established and legitimate resource. So I'm very grateful that New Directions agreed to partner with us, because I think it really solidified our presence on Kenyon's campus, and just made us members of the community that were taken more seriously and viewed as more trustworthy. Another really, really important element of this partnership was the training that we received through New Directions and the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence. Prior to the partnership, we were training each other, basically. So the older and more experienced members of SERPA were essentially training the younger people who had just been recruited. And while we do have a pretty comprehensive and vast knowledge of topics pertaining to sexual misconduct, it frankly wasn't as thorough as what New Directions was able to provide for us this past academic year. So that has been absolutely game-changing, and New Directions led a wonderful training experience in the midst of a pandemic. So that was wonderful. Another element of the partnership that is really important to us as a group, but unfortunately we weren't able to put into practice too much because of the pandemic, was kind of SERPA's presence in the community outside of Gambier, just in the larger Knox County community. I think in the years to come, we really want to pay it forward to New Directions by helping them with their advocacy and their community outreach, especially because they helped us so much this year. I think we really want to give back to our community at large by doing programming outside of solely Kenyon oriented spaces. So although I graduated, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the partnership develops in a larger sense and in a larger community. In terms of key takeaways from the partnership, through this partnership, we're able to broaden our understanding of sexual misconduct as it affects many different types of people, and that simply wouldn't have been possible without support and a partnership with New Directions. So I think, especially at like small college campuses, it's a good idea to extend your support just beyond the insular bubble that is your campus. So I would recommend that other groups replicate that. There is so much more I could say and so much more I want to say, but I will wrap it up for the sake of time. I absolutely admire and appreciate and love New Direction so much. I think SERPA could never be what it has become without their support. And I'm so excited to watch it evolve and to watch SERPA kind of give back to New Directions for all that they've done for us, and just continue to watch like each organization help each other out. Yeah, it's a really beautiful partnership, and I am very grateful. So thank you so much. Bye. Hi.
So now that you've been able to hear from a few of our key stakeholders, get maybe a little bit more of an idea about from other people's perspectives, like the history, where it started, the struggles, for lack of a better word, during the process of getting everything organized and together, and then the involving of the collaboration. During this process, and still, since it's still so new, we are learning a lot of lessons. So lots of lessons have been learned, which is a good thing. But we definitely want to extend to those of you who are on the call to think about, like, where can your agency help? So we had to really think about where can our agency help within this? Where can we fit on campus? What connections did we have? What connections, who did we know that we could talk with that already had specific roles defined and established on campus? And with this, we recognize that Kenyon College is very, very unique in that a student organization of peer advocates already existed on campus. And I know that this is rare. Having worked at another university myself, it's very rare to have this. But if you don't have this already, don't let it negatively impact your decision on wanting to collaborate with universities or colleges in your area in any way. Our advice in this case would be find people on each campus. So connection is key. Find those people. This could be unique or unexpected partners. This could be existing student organizations with complementary missions, like Planned Parenthood Generation Action Groups, perhaps. Student volunteers, maybe, at a local rape crisis center. Staff and faculty groups. It could be, for example, women's centers on campus, women and gender studies departments, diversity and inclusion organizations. Other departments, you could look for faculty doing research in similar areas, possibly the Title IX offices, the health and counseling centers, if your universities or colleges have those. Just be creative, think outside the box, because you never know who might have these same interests and desire to have a campus group of advocates. When doing this, you're definitely going to want to be prepared to key stakeholders, to others involved, to define the need for campus advocacy. So maybe gather some local campus or county sexual assault statistics if you can. A good way to do this, if you're not familiar, would be to contact your local rape crisis center, find out who the person who facilitates the sexual assault response team is. They usually have a lot of statistics within the county on different sexual assault cases for more current cases as well as years past. Survivor stories, if you have any, are very impactful. Utilize the statistics that I provided earlier in the program, and I can always, email anything that you need statistics-wise as well. I would also say definitely have a protocol in place prior to students' commitment. It's a good idea to have a protocol in place. In the protocol, I think it would be, with what I've learned, really helpful to include what you expect from the students. So time commitments, for example. So whatever your agency decides the time commitments for the students is going to be, definitely include that. Training expectations. So you're going to want to definitely include that it's required to have 40 hours of training. That's a big time commitment for anybody, but especially for students who are involved in classes and extracurricular organizations and have their own lives, their own personal lives. If you want to do any like weekly or monthly meetings, if you're planning on having that connection piece, I would really encourage that as well. And then any kind of like agency reporting processes or any other items that you see important to include, I would definitely encourage you to have something that the students are aware of prior to their commitment. So I have an example as to why this is so important. So as you all know through this call, we already had a group of students who were committed, and through working everything out, there were 20 students, I want to say 20 students who originally wanted to and said that they were SERPAs. So when our agency collaborated and combined, and then they were an extension of our agency, we thought, well, how can we get the word out on campus? So we decided to have posters made with names and pictures of the SERPAs so that they were, if they decided to be easily identifiable on campus to survivors who might need them, or if someone needed their support, but they didn't want to have like a conflict of interest, for example, they could know who to steer clear of. But when we did this, we went ahead and we ordered the posters. We ordered really nice posters and really nice little like cardstock things that they could hand out. And we ordered them right away. And it was about $400 on our end, which, you know, especially for nonprofit agencies in the midst of a lot of cuts, that's not very cheap. So we ordered all these posters. And then after receiving the posters, we had about 5 to 6 members who decided they weren't able to commit. So we have these really nice posters that we're thinking, how are we going to like get rid of these names and these pictures? So we got creative and figured out how to do it. But that's just an example of why I would say definitely have protocols in place, definitely have that secured commitment from the students before spending a lot of money or before deciding what you wanted to do for your training class, for example. Building relationships, it really does take time. It takes a lot of work, a lot of patience, as we stated, but it's definitely worth the outcome. Some takeaways that we've had with our agency also is that new partnerships with agencies both on and off campus, you develop stronger relationships and connections with existing partners. So through this, we've been able to develop a stronger connection with the Title IX office, the Health and Counseling Center, which has been very beneficial for our agency because we're able to have space over there if we need to meet with a survivor. We get a lot more referrals, so that's helpful for the survivors. Definitely, again, like I stated, be mindful of timeframes and commitment from student members. And then it's important to remember, above all else, we're all on the same team. We all have that number one goal of how do we best support the survivor? And how can we be the best possible team to support that survivor? And especially at like a college university level, I found there are a lot of like hoops to jump through, or signatures, for example, that you may need to get an email sent even. All of those things can seem tiring, can seem tedious, and sometimes a little frustrating, to be honest. But I think it's important to remember our end goal about supporting the survivors through all of this. So that's where I think connection is key to having those weekly or monthly meetings to just refresh, rejuvenate, debrief if you need to. Take care of yourself. We all know that self-care is a really large part of the work that we're doing. So now I'm going to ask you to work with me in a little brainstorm activity. This is going to be individual. So if you could pull out a paper and pen, or maybe your notepad on your phone, your computer, whatever you're using, I'm going to go ahead and give you 10 minutes to brainstorm. So what I want you to do is think about your local colleges and universities in your area, and then just make a list of what those are. And then I'm also going to ask you to list out contacts that you might have, potential staff, potential contacts, faculty contacts. Like I said before, really think outside of the box here. And with that, have another list of student organizations that you could contact, or maybe student volunteers that you're aware of. But just really think outside the box and get creative, because I mean, all you're going to get is a hard no, maybe from some of these organizations or some of these people. And then you know not to contact them again and just move on and just go down the list. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys 10 minutes, give you all, excuse me, 10 minutes to create your list. And then we're going to come back together and I'm going to ask to hear what some of you all put down, some of your great ideas. So I'll go ahead and give you 10 minutes and we'll start now and we'll meet back at 11:30. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring everybody back. Hopefully that was enough time. And is anybody willing to share with the larger group what some of your ideas are, what some of your brainstorm activity consisted of? And like you all know from this presentation, we're super new with this too. So if anybody on this call has things that we haven't included, that would be really helpful too. Does anyone want to at least share like what some of your local colleges and universities are, or anything unique to your universities and colleges in your area?
Hi, this is Nora Flanagan. I'm an advocate out of Helpline, Delaware, Monroe counties. And this year we had put together a program with Ohio Wesleyan as our campus here in Delaware County. There was a student that contacted me who was interested in doing a support group on campus. So we ended up kind of what you were saying, for years had been working on the periphery with Ohio Wesleyan, but hadn't really formed a partnership. So this year we formed a partnership with the student organization, kind of grassroots, like you were saying, called Empower OWU, and then worked with the Title IX coordinator and the Women's Resource Center to facilitate a support group for them. I so want to elevate it to the status that Kenyon and New Directions have. I'm so impressed with all of your work. So I'm getting a lot out of this, and just listing the student organizations you could contact is kind of where I started going more with the brainstorming session. And then also defining the need for advocacy that sits offside the campus, since they don't have an advocate on campus anyway, but also just why go outside of college. So that's kind of what I came up with. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nora, for sharing, and congratulations on the strides that you all have made. That's really incredible.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to, oh, sorry, go
doing
ahead.
it for like 11 years, and it's been I'm an old alum from there, and it's been like my dream. So I was like, okay, one thing good during the pandemic happened.
Yeah,
And we
that's
did the support group
awesome.
as well, and we had about 8 students, and it was great. So yeah.
That's wonderful. I'm so happy for you all. And I'm going to, on the last, slide, share my contact info. So feel free to jot that down and, share any expertise with me as well with your journey.
Lauren, we also have a little bit of chat action.
Oh, okay.
Karen Grooms left a little thing in the chat that says, if we could get an advocate at the open houses to introduce programs, that would be a good start.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I agree with that. That's a really good one. And maybe also like seeing if you could do anything with the first year orientation, even if it's not in person, something, maybe you could like have a little video clip that you're able to share.
We have another comment in the chat from Roy Lutz, who says that they work in high schools and grade schools, but thinks of it as the same thing in advocacy, just different kinds of campuses. They mentioned they leverage those relationships with principals, counselors, coaches, ADs, teachers, and administration staff. And they're also wanting to initiate work with PTAs and other ancillary programs. So they utilize clubs within the schools to help do the work and find ways the missions and the visions intersect.
That's incredible. That's really great. I love that. I love the PTAs as well. Like I have never really thought about that aspect for the age groups that you're referring to, but that's a really great idea. Well, these are all very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to go ahead and end my portion of the presentation. If anyone has any questions, I would love to provide you with some answers. And not sure why it's not letting me go to the next slide. Here we go. My contact info is located on this slide. So the 740 number, that's our 24/7 hotline, but my extension is listed there, and then my email address as well. So I would love to hear from anyone. Like I said, we're new at this as well. So if you've got any tips or expertise that you would love to share with me, with us, I would love that. So, and I'll go ahead and leave a couple of minutes for any questions, but thank you so much for being here with me today. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy, hectic schedules to be here.
And I just want to say that was an amazing presentation, Lauren. And I just want to thank you so much for dedicating your time and energy to presenting for us. And I also want to thank the participants for donating their time and energy to sit here and listen and be with us in this time. I also want to give out the CEU and CLE credits for those who need that. The word is innovate, and I'll go ahead and type it in the chat real quick. Otherwise, feel free to chime in with your questions. The only thing happening after this is at 12:05, we have that lunch break, and then at 1:05, we'll continue with our workshops.
Well, if there are no questions, again, thank you so much for being on this call with us today. And Kate, thank you so much for being here as well as the interpreters. We really appreciate that. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Lauren. That was amazing. And thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, Kate, as well. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for being here. I can't tell if we're done. Everybody.
We are done. If you are done, we are done. And I will close out the meeting when everyone has gone, if that's okay.
Thank you. I appreciate all of you being here.
I'm going to go ahead and end, everyone. Is that okay?
Thank you so much, April.
Of course. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon and the workshops.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.